leader must ensure the inputs and outputs are streamlined through production processes. It is here that role of medium, small and micro enterprises comes to the fore. MSMEs form the building block of upstream and downstream supply chain of the economy. The entire supply chain needs to be continuously adjusted to the changing external factors such as new technology and innovation, national and international policy changes, or broader market sentiments. Thus, in the current expected future scenarios, supply chain holds a very important significance. I would like to mention here that all of you must be aware the PM and the Commerce Minister with the government are very proactive to provide any sort of help to the increase in the export trade and the manufacturing sector in the country. So taking that into account, this SME supply chain competitive program is kept. So before we start with the panel discussion, let me introduce you one by one our very eminent list of panelists who have joined with us today. The first one is Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, Deputy Head and Senior Economic Affairs, UNES-CAP, New Delhi. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, SCAP, is the most inclusive intergovernment platform in Asia Pacific region, working toward the Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030. So I put the first question as a moderator to Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna. The question is, what is your current and near future assessment of the impact on MSMEs from ongoing macroeconomic developments across the major market regions such as Europe, USA, Africa, Southeast Asia, etc.? Please also throw light on what are the various initiatives being undertaken or envisaged by UN and its supporting SME to build supply chain competitiveness and enhance linkage with India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dhingra Saab, and good morning to all of you. Let me first of all thank EEPC for inviting me. A little bit 1 minute about UNSCAP. SCAP stands for Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, and we have a regional office in New Delhi which looks into South and Southwest Asia. So our job is to promote more of regional integration and cooperation, etc. Let me try to share my screen if it is
overhearing that also. Check karo jara.
Sorry, sir. Sorry for the interruption. Kindly continue.
So, are you able to see my screen? Hello?
Yes, we can see
yes,
your screen.
Yes.
You are able to see my screen, right?
Right.
Okay. So, let me just quickly give you certain facts, and then I will come to what we in UN are doing. Already has been spoken, SMEs are the backbone of Indian economy. It accounts for around 40% of the total exports and 37% of the total GDP. Engineering, of course, has sector comprised 25% of the total exports, but 3% of the GDP. And India's top markets are US, China, UAE, Italy, and Germany, with their respective percentage share over the total engineering exports. Now, when we talk about SME or MSMEs and then look into, and the question which has been asked, how the market is going to develop, what we will have to look at is how the country's economic growth is taking place. And the red one, which I was talking about, is about our South and Southwest Asia, which is average of 10 countries. And then this is about the blue one is about Asia and Pacific. And if you will see, before COVID, South and Southwest Asia economic growth was much faster than all an average of all the Asia Pacific countries. But we were hit badly during the COVID. And while the other countries and the total lump sum for the Asia Pacific, the impact for the negative growth was less. For South Asia, it was much more. Still, the projections are that now the growth, and we are reaching a pre-pandemic stage, so our growth will be perhaps much better than the rest. But still, if you would look at some of the issues and the questions which are important, one second. Yeah, is about what are the impediments. And what I did was I looked at India's bilateral trade cost with some of the countries. And this involves the bilateral trade cost as to how much is the trade cost for if you have to export, and comprehensive or a total, if you will see, with every country which are top in our list, especially in the engineering sector or the South Asia, you will see 80, 100%, and for Pakistan, I mean, it's more than 400%. And similarly, the tariff ad valorem, if you will see, you will find that for many countries, the tariff is not that high, but the non-tariff component is high. So on an average, you can see the non-tariff component for your bilateral trade is higher, much higher than the tariff component. So around 100% of barriers in terms of percentage comes from the non-tariff trade cost. Also, if you look at the COVID and e-commerce, because e-commerce has picked up during the COVID, and there are many sectors which perform better, and there are certain sectors which are from engineering sector, like ICT, electronics, some furnishing, and some tools, etc. So these are the potentials which, despite COVID, when there was a negative growth, they saw a better growth all around the world. And importantly, if you see the top 10 countries as to how they were trading, and what I want to share with you, because when you are talking about a supply chain, what is important is to look into this B2B e-commerce sale. And if you will see, for all these top 10 countries, the e-commerce business to business sale of the total e-commerce sale is not less than 80%, except in case of UK and Germany, where it is 72 or 79%. So when you want to become a part of a supply chain, the conventional methods of going, seeking order is perfectly fine. You have your clients, you them your supplier. But if you really have an aspiration of going beyond and expanding much more, and I know Prime Minister has set export targets, Ministry of Commerce has set target, we are talking about being a 5 trillion economy. In that particular case, the growth need to be much higher than 8%, 8.2% projected, right? There is a report in another couple of years, population-wise, we'll surpass China and will become one of the largest population. And that also brings the another advantage that we have. We will become one of the largest markets in the world. So this is where I think e-commerce is an important tool, where perhaps Indian engineering sector, and especially SME sector, is lacking, and that is important to be addressed. Perhaps EPC can play a more better role in facilitating as to how e-commerce business can be promoted. Also, when I was talking about India's population, this is just the latest and simple formulation done. If you see the share of total GST collected for India, the GST from import is collected only 24%. But if you see within the domestic, within the same state, it is 46%, and interstate is 30%. So 76% of the total GST collection is coming from the domestic sale, and that is how the economic impact of the COVID for India, because of its own large domestic market, continued to sustain. What I am saying is, we often look at exports, and sometimes we try to ignore even the domestic market. But when we are going to become the largest population, largest market in the world, even the domestic marketing would be very, very important. If you also see, because for the e-commerce, what is important is to look into the how much we are digitally integrated with the rest of the world, and India is actually lagging behind so far as the digital, even in terms of the policies. So these are, you can see the blue band is for the India, and the red or orange one is for the Asia Pacific. So you can see in most of the cases, except for this intermediary liability and infrastructure and competition because of the software, etc., we are lagging behind in terms of digital trade. And that is another sector where we can work. So now it comes to the question what UN is doing. I mean, these are our studies which we have brought it. UN does a lot of capacity building. We do a lot of stakeholder consultations. We facilitate knowledge and impart training and policy, evidence-based policy advisory to the government, sometimes to the private sector, in how they can expand their business. We are, of course, there are other impediments in India which needs to be addressed, and we are also working on that. And it's well known, high interest rates, power tariff, cross-border connectivity, infrastructure, doing business. Even many of you who are into the business community, during COVID time, how much price of a container it was to get it. So some of these issues and challenges are very important and relevant, where intervention by the policy interventions by the government will be very, very important. I will end my slide, but what I would like now to just summarize in terms of our work that many we find in MSME, and especially for the women entrepreneurs. I mean, we have a dedicated project for women entrepreneurs, and we are training MSME-based women entrepreneurs as to how they can use digital marketing and e-commerce to promote their business. So far, we have trained around 500 Indian women, and we have created a network of around 1,500 women entrepreneurs in SAARC, where they are exchanging and trading among themselves. So I will end up here. Thank you very much.
Sir, I think you are on mute. Dhingra, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for your valuable insight.
Sir, you are again on mute.
Now it's okay.
Yes, sir.
Now continuing with our deliberation, and let us dig little deeper at micro level scenario. Our next question is to Dr. Tamal Sarkar. Citing prominent engineering clusters, please highlight few examples how Indian engineering supply chains are getting affected due to the current challenges, and what steps SMEs may take to enhance their integration into the international supply chain. Over to Dr. Sarkar.
Thank you, Mr. Dhingra. I hope I am audible.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the Foundation for MSME Clusters is actually working in clusters in India, SMEs clusters in India. And our, if we go through our database, we find that there are approximately 280 odd MSMEs, engineering MSME clusters in India. And it's mostly dominated by, products like foundry, engineering equipment, machinery and equipment other than transport. These are some of the top ones actually: electrical consumables, fabrication, machine tool, pumps and motors. And these products actually cover approximately 75% of the MSME, engineering MSME clusters in India. And if you look at the regional distribution, few states, I think around 10 or 11 states, cover approximately 85% of the clusters in this country. Now, EEP, as per the data available, it shows that India is definitely uh, very rich so far as engineering industry is concerned, and it's one of the strong points of the engineering industry. It's a very high exports, and etc. etc. But if we look at the manufacturing sector per se, we find that manufacturing as a percentage of GDP is hovering around 15% for quite some time. I mean, I saw data up to 2014-15. From that time onwards, it's almost at the same level. And we have a nation has put a target to reach around 25%. And one of the major tools where we have where the country is promoting is Make in India, where we are expecting that where we are probably are targeting that the international supply chain will use our labor and local supplies capacities to get it produced over here and increase the contribution of the GDP of manufacturing and, of course, engineering included in the country. But if we look at the labor and the R&D and the designs and the other aspects, various aspects of the manufacturing sector, very broadly we find that the subcontinents are mostly into highly labor intensive production, and labor and raw material consist of sometimes as high as 70 to 80% of the total product cost that we are actually manufacturing, barring exceptions, of course. Now, my feeling is that if we just go for through the Make in India approach, which of course is the need of the hour because of the high labor capacity, labor promotion capacity. But what is also required that we need to have we need to walk on two legs. That's what I suggest. While we promote our manufacturing in Make in India, we also need to take lead in certain sectors, which actually makes us a noticeable production center or a thought center in terms of engineering manufacturing in globally. And for that to happen, what is required is that the suggestion that I have is basically that we have so many clusters across the country. Like in Foundry, we have 40 odd clusters, engineering equipment 30 odd clusters. Now, what actually creates excellence? Excellence will be generally created if we are investing heavily into R&D, but not in a very desegregated or manner where everybody is trying to do something or the other in the area of research and development, but a national agenda of what are the areas needs to be promoted in a particular area. And when I say national agenda, it's an agenda which the business has to create actually. And how this can be done is there are models like this all over the world where industries from different parts of the country or even globally are coming together and forming networks and deciding that what is the next level of technology that they are going to develop so that they are up in the value chain. And we all know that basically the higher returns in the value chain comes mostly in the area of designs and R&Ds, etc. So we need to, if we need to really push our GDP manufacturing ratio, as percentage of GDP ratio, we need to concentrate on that side also, apart from trying to produce as much as possible. In fact, if we do that, that actually creates a roadmap where where other countries feel confident enough to come over to our country and set up the production centers here rather than other places, because they get the benefits of innovation which is coming naturally from the clusters in this country. So, and when we create this networking, it is important that not only the OEMs are involved in this thing, because it has been seen globally also that clusters where the knowledge is situated mostly at the top, and the suppliers are mostly manufacturers or just giving labor and raw materials. These sort of clusters often have a tendency to lose their competitiveness as compared to those clusters where the innovative capacity is spread across the value chain within the clusters. So not only the OEMs, but their tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers are also in the process of innovation and knowledge, because that actually makes the transfer of knowledge or purchasing of knowledge or coding of knowledge very difficult for any competitive partners or countries or other places who are trying to source products from here. So my thought process is that if we can identify, say, 10 products in the engineering sector which has the highest capacities or highest returns or high production or under some criteria, and then we form networks of not only OEMs but also the tier 1s and tier 2 suppliers across the country, and decide that what is the area of research that we need to concentrate on, and then promote that research, which is done also with the support of other ecosystem players, and not only in the country but also outside the country. I think that actually is the need of the hour. So if we can really want to integrate ourselves more holistically, not only as a supplier of finished goods or supplier of goods to the intermediary goods to the global value chain, but also as a supplier of technologies to the global value chain, where we can get much better returns, and we can increase our contribution to GDP in that respect. So I will stop here, and maybe we can have questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. The two words which I found very appealing to all our MSMEs, cluster and network. You see, the problem here is everybody is trying to do whatever he feels the best. But if we have to do the international supply chain, then networking is a must. Because integration for imports and for exports up to the buyer's door, if networking is done, it is going to be beneficial for all concerned, starting from 0 to 100. So it's a very good thought, and I'm sure our MSME members and engineering sector members are going to take lead from you. Thank you very much. Now
Thank you.
To the Exim Bank. You see, finance is the blood of supply chain. With this view, my next question to Mrs. Meghana Joglekar, General Manager, Exim Bank of India. In the current difficult times, how the importance of export-import finance is growing for engineering MSMEs. Please also highlight what are the various financial schemes and facilities offered by the Government of India to SMEs to cover their international supply chain risks. I know that when Exim Bank was set up in 1981, there were all the banks available, but still this bank was made to take into account the international business, not only to help the project exports, which they started with initially, but now I know you have so many schemes where you are helping the small scale industry also. And you also please explain some of the lines of credit which you are giving so that our members may be able to make benefit of that. Over to you, Yoglekarji.
Thank you, Lingdaji, and a very good morning to all my fellow panel members. Anjani ji, it is good to see you. And Rajan ji and Tamal ji, it is nice to connect today, and of course to all the participating members who are present here. Warm greetings from the Export-Import Bank of India. So at the outset, of course, let me thank EPC for getting us onboarded to this event, and I think sessions as such are sort of important to connect and debate on topics as such. So I'm just going to share a presentation. Just let me know if that's. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, it's fine, right? Okay. In case if there's an issue, just let me know. So I mean, just as a context setting, I think from morning 10 o'clock, of course, I have logged in, and I think I don't need to elaborate further. And of course, be sitting here in terms of importance of MSMEs in the context of Indian economy, and I think the statistics speak for themselves. But what I would definitely like to mention, I mean, some of the statistics which we say that, today almost 40 to 50% of the country's exports are done by the MSMEs. But what I wanted to make a mention here that, in terms of the actual number of SMEs who are actually doing these exports is smaller, and that percentage can certainly improve. So this is again, it is basically, the number just shows, that, okay, so there is so much potential for the SMEs to sort of get into the international trade. So this is one thing I wanted to mention. Now, second is, of course, as far as the sector itself goes, as far as engineering exports go. So speakers before me also, I mean, Rajan also mentioned, that it's a very high export orientation, especially in the engineering goods. And they itself are about 52% of the total turnover of the goods itself. But and the interesting part is 1/4 of the country's exports, in FY22, almost 1/4 were by engineering goods last year. And out of that 1/4, MSMEs accounted for 1/4 of it. So just the fact that the export orientation of the sector is so high, I think, supply chains, especially global supply chains, become very important and relevant from the topic perspective,
Madam, can you just make this, ma'am? Sorry for the
Yes.
interruption. Can you just make it full screen? The
One
slides
minute.
full screen.
Is it okay? Is
It's
it okay
still
now?
yeah, now better. Yeah, thank
Is
you.
it coming full screen? Yeah, I was not sure. That's why I asked you. This is going a bit in the blind. When you try to share.
No, now it
presentations.
is okay.
All right.
It is
okay.
okay now.
Okay. So, coming to, I think as far as, the supply chain dynamics, I mean, it is something, of course, we have been reading in the papers every day. So we definitely see one thing, let me mention, I think some of the stats, 70% of the international trade today relies on global value chains. Now, there are these shifts, or, the architecture is undergoing with certain characteristics. For example, rising trade protectionism. I think high inflation, due to global shocks to food, energy, and commodity prices is something I think we are reading every day. The pandemic, of course, I think unprecedented of its kind, which has affected the supply chain. And today we hear about container shortages and elevated shipping cost, or, the geopolitical situation, which is sort of unfolding. And amidst this sort of a context, we have seen that, some of the strategies which are being built or being adopted to build sort of resilient supply chains. So, we see now patterns, for example, of nearshoring and reshoring. So, reshoring is basically trying to bring back offshore activities back to your home country. Or nearshoring is, where you want to bring those activities back to the point of sale or use. So, you are certainly seeing these sort of things. Today, I think, companies do not want to have, or let's say depend on a single source of supply, whether it is low cost basis, but rather would want to have a little diversified sort of a supply source in terms of components or shortages or whatever. And the third thing, which is, of course, I think, the China plus one strategy, So this is, the production bases are shifting away, and which is, of course, giving a lot of opportunities, especially now we are seeing, with EXIM also I see, I mean, I'll talk about the Ubarte Sitare program as well. But we are seeing that, some of the companies which come to us are sort of, now they see themselves at an inflection point of demand, where demand has suddenly spiked, and especially of the engineering goods segment that we are specifically talking, whether it is auto component sector and you're supplying a component, we see sudden spikes in demand because of the China plus one. So these are developments which are happening today, and I think all of us should be cognizant to it. Now, see, coming to the MSMEs in the global value chain participation, I did mention that, the stats say 70% depend on global value participation. But if we look at India, the numbers, what are there today? Now, let me speak, India's overall participation. I think some of our peer countries are doing better than us. Now, from the exports perspective, let us look at the forward participation. If we look at the forward participation, it is almost like, 16.5% of the exports. So this number again, I don't want to say is low, rather I would want to say that there is so much potential to sort of do good in this sort of a numbers. Now, why and I of course how Exim can help sort of integrating some of these companies into the global value chains, and what are we doing? Of course, I would like to speak about that. But the challenges which I think, just listing some of the broad ones here. I mean, there could be several of it. Whether it is a technology, whether it is modernization or innovation, or R&D itself, or let's say sort of developing your markets or skill, and of course you are facing competition from peer countries for similar sort of products. So all these sort of things, and of course access to finance. Now, all of these sort of gaps could be filled in terms of access to finance, and to increase the overall participation of MSMEs or increase their competitiveness, I think one has to work on all these aspects. So now when it comes to access to finance, now I'll just quickly zero on in terms of, how can we help, as Exim Bank, how can we help? And Dhingraji very nicely started by saying, when you were set up in 1981, I was so glad to hear that statistics, because this year we actually complete 40 years of proud operations. We were set up in 1981. 1982 is what we commenced operations in this year's. So one thing, just for the benefit of all the audience members, so Exim is a financial institution. I just thought I'll bring the distinction between commercial banks and FIs, which are operating with very specific dedicated focus in terms of their setup. And we are of course 100% owned by the government of India. Now, I thought I'll just, since Dhingraji asked me, I of course wanted to specifically talk in the context of SMEs, but I'll just take a minute now to sort of explain our broad range. So one is, so we are a policy institution to the government of India. Now, what do I exactly mean by that? So basically, one of the flagship program by which Exim Bank is known is the lines of credit. Now, lines of credit is what India extends to other sovereign nations. So be it, Southeast Asia, for example, CLMV, the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, or about 48 countries in Africa and some countries in Latin America. And of course, let's not forget our neighbors, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Mongolia. So now these lines Exim Bank is extending these lines on behalf of the government of India, and where project exports are happening from India to all these countries. And as far as the Indian exporter, there is no buyer's risk or there is no country risk, because Exim is sort of the borrower country is a overseas sovereign. Now, these are, of course, it follows a very procurement sort of a path, and I would really encourage everybody to go to our website and sort of see how the lines of credit function, and how as an exporter, if you want to participate in one of the lines of credit project, if you are in that relevant business, then there is a pre-qualification exercise which is conducted, and you sort of participate, and once you get selected as a L1 by the overseas government, then of course Exim makes the disbursement. That is how it works. I mean, happy to answer any queries if they have on the lines of credit, but of course it's a bit of a sorry, is there a disturbance? Yeah, so it is a bit of a longish process, but kindly go through the site, and if there are any queries. Now, second is of course buyer's credit. Now, that is something which we do where we extend the loans to overseas entities, where again the imports are happening out of India. So we are sort of supporting exports happening from the country. And of course, there is non-funding and there is refinancing as well. Sorry, Pallavi, you can still hear me, right? I got a bit of disturbance at my end. I just wanted to reconfirm.
Ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. All right, okay. Now, coming to the next set of loans, which I just wanted to mention, and what we call as export capability creation. So to put in a nutshell, let's say you are a company, let's say an SME, which is engaged into exports. Technically, we can support you with all kinds of funding requirement. Now, be it term loans, working capital, or but I today wanted to mention about overseas investment finance. Basically help an Indian company go global when you are setting up a joint venture or a wholly owned subsidiary overseas. But today I would like to focus on one of our flagship offerings which we have towards where the MSMEs sort of get benefited. So these all programs, I really don't want anybody to sort of get confused in terms of the nomenclature of the programs per se. But let us look at a very nice smile curve of the value chain. So EXIM support could form in any one of these finance requirements that any company today has, whether it is the R&D finance, for example. Now I will give I'll give some examples where we've actually done R&D finance. We also give loans towards product development support. Then when I say purchase, for example, for import finance or purchase of machinery, production for increasing of capacity expansions of units today. So this is what we call, export capability creation. And then distribution, of course, the export finance. Now, typically, EXIM has been a player in the medium to long space, financing exports in the medium to long term space. But recently, even in the short term export space, we have launched new initiatives such as the trade assistance program, where we are tying with a network of Indian banks and the overseas bank and sort of adding confirmation to the overseas banks LC, so that today exporters can look at diversify from of the more traditional markets like, let's say, the US and Europe, and try to venture into new markets. And then, of course, for some very small who really require handholding support, there are also things like marketing advisory services, where we sort of try to help them if there is any way to more like at a grassroots level sort of a thing, where they may need some help in terms of trying to place their products overseas, or really do not have that sort of a wherewithal. So this was just a nutshell. I thought but let us be very clear, EXIM sort of steps in when there is a export orientation, or let's say, today, if you all are exporting, then definitely it's a clear mandate fit, or let's say at least export aspiration has to be there. Now, if you are a pure domestic player, I think the Indian banking sector is sufficient sort of to cater to all your requirements. And with me sitting here, I think all of the MSMEs requirements as well. I thought I'll just make a mention of that. Now, since I'm talking to all of you all today, we'll be very pleased to sort of talk about one of the recent initiatives, the Ubharte Sitare program, and SME is our partner institution in this program. So this Ubharte Sitare program let me mention that MSMEs are the largest beneficiaries under this particular program. But I just wanted to mention what sort of companies do we actually identify under this program. Now, the Ubharte Sitare program, here we try to identify those companies who are future champions with good export potential. Now, so typically we are trying to look at those SMEs who are sort of on a little high growth path for whatever inflation. Now, when I say high growth path, it could be they have a potential advantage either in terms of their product offering, or their technology, or their process, or let's say they are dealing with some sort of a niche market. I mentioned about global value participation and how we have supported. I'll come to that. So, there has to be something unique or little different, which is sort of putting the company on a fast track, growth, and has the potential to sort of emerge bigger. So we are trying to identify such company, and this was exactly the objective with which this program was announced. And this program was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister in the budget of 2020. Thereafter, of course, which COVID happened, and the program gained traction last year. But now we are doing very interesting things across various sectors. Today, my examples would be limited to more relevant to the engineering sort of and broad overview sector, but very interesting things. So here the objective is to provide finance and handholding support to create international champions from India, and eventually see overall, as the program picks up, would want to see, how it is impacting the country's exports, economic growth, and employment. And to do so, of course, we collaborate and engage. For example, today we are talking, I'm present here and talking about it, and there is dissemination. So similarly, we talk with industry associations, we talk with incubation centers of academic institutions. So this is how we are doing. And I thought I'll just make a mention. Nowhere here the idea is, to sort of come and replace any of your existing banking structure, So today, let's say you could be banking with Citi, you could be banking with Axis or any other private bank or any other commercial bank. The idea is to sort of come, along with your existing bank, sort of help you to take to the next level. And especially if you are a growing SME or aspiring or at that inflection point of growth, the more bankers which are there to support, I think that is the best. Coming to the broad offerings of the Ubharte Sitare program. Now here, of course, the program rests on three pillars. One is debt. I think debt, all of us understand. I mean, I'll just quickly classify. So debt typically is term loans. Now, term loans could be for any sort of a funding requirement you have, and which I mentioned the smile curve, whether we need debt for the R&D, or whether we need debt for, for product development, or for capacity, or for machinery, or for expansion, so debt is of course working capital. Of course, yes, working capital is something that we definitely need. We try to finance the export contracts, and of course non-funded facilities. A very interesting offering under this, there is the Ubharte Sitare Fund, where Exim and SEDBI are principal sponsors. Now, this fund is a category 2 alternate investment fund, and here the fund is actually doing equity or equity-like instruments into such companies who are being identified under the program. So that is run by SVCL. This is again a very interesting, and there is a small grant component under the program, which gives a very specific need-based assistance, for example, for certification or for overseas market, let's say combined with the debt or something like that. So these are the broad product offerings. Now, I'm conscious of the time. I would just like to quickly close with some of the examples. So, it will sort of drive home the point that what we have been trying to make. Now, here, of course, we have restricted to the examples which are closer to the current sector that we are specifically talking about. But, like, for example, the auto and auto components. Now, every product that is listed here, or every company that we've supported, has a very interesting narrative. Now, here, this is a company which is sort of setting up a project, for steel pistons purely for overseas market. Now, this is a classic case of, global value integration, where the small part goes and sits in an overseas, OEM's large part of the piece. And here we help them with sort of, capacity enhancement in terms of machinery acquisition. And again, what they're doing is sort of one of its kind. Another very interesting company we did, they do fundamental R&D. They create market for themselves again in the auto segment, and sort of are trying to enter into OEMs, and where they are changing the product design to accommodate this per company's product. So very fundamental technology, if I may say, very R&D driven. Here we have supported them with an R&D loan. Now, it is again not very common because it's more like a revenue expenditure, but sort of a term loan being supported. Another very interesting company. Now, this is a company which is into industry 4, logistics. So they create all this. I'm sorry. So they create all these big logistics solutions, both software and hardware, for warehouse management. And they received a large, again, one of its kind, supplying from India. And they received a large export contract, for a long gestation period. And we sort of came in to give them a cash flow deficit financing to sort of help them execute this particular contract. So again, a very interesting thing which is happening here. Another case, a very small company, we gave a product development loan, because they are good in what they do, again industry 4 robotic solutions, but very small company and trying to tap export markets, and we gave them some modifications can get them export inquiries, and that sort of a support we played. Another very interesting company which I have written copper titanium alloys. So they make these non-sparking hand tools, but they they replace the base thing, or so it was replaced from a copper beryllium to a copper titanium, which is not hazardous, more durable. And we did a sort of a equity come debt structure to support this company, depending on the financials. Now, the last, of course, in the semiconductor, here also we supported them with an R&D sort of a loan. So every company has a very interesting narrative, in terms of their growth scale and product differentiation, and how our intervention is sort of helping. I just want to make a mention here. I mean, of course, there'll be questions. What is the cost of credit, and collateral, and what? So see, this is not some kind of a standardized product, where we can say X years and Y rate of interest. So every company is unique in terms of their offerings, and will have a specific gap that they want to fill. But I just wanted to mention, so here the companies that we are talking, some are as small with a turnover of, let's say, 4 or 5 crores, and going up to 250 crores turnover, or 1 or 2 even higher. here, but as I mentioned, predominantly small and medium enterprises are beneficiaries under this program. Much larger companies really do not need that sort of hand-holding support. So I just hope that, this was a sort of helpful, and any queries that you'll have, please reach out to us. Somebody, I don't know whether asked me, at seed@eximbankindia.in, and if there are any queries, and we'll be happy to meet one-on-one and sort of take it from there. So well, I'll just take a pause and stop here now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Meghna ji. You have explained too much in detail, elaborate, but let me mention, I was working with ECGC and attended inaugural program of the exam. Thereafter, we were associated in so many programs, and we went abroad to check and inspect the projects also. But anyhow, the scope has increased, and I'm very sure that our exporters and MSMEs will take full use of this. Another thing which I want to mention, that we conduct so many programs here for our members. So I would request you to be associated with such programs, and we shall send you the invitation and all that, so that our other members also make full use of, because everybody may not be knowing what you have explained today that Exim Bank is doing. So nice of you. Thank you very much. Now I go to Mr. Anjani Srivastav. Small Industries Finance Company is the backbone of building supply chain efficiency. With this view, my question to you, sir, what is the role of small industry finance companies in facilitating finance for MSMEs, and how SMEs can optimize their supply chain both domestically and internationally by availing their financial schemes? Over to you.
So thank you, Dingraji. In fact, I'll put it this way, that when you're the last speaker, a lot of what you thought of saying, is already spoken by the rest of the speakers. So nevertheless, I'll try to, humbly add, rather, I'll put it that way, to what all the, the esteemed speakers have spoken earlier. So I'll break your question into two parts. First part is where you asked about the role of the small industry finance companies in facilitating MSMEs. So I'll start in a different way. We have to first understand what is the spectrum we are talking about when we are talking of MSMEs. MSMEs, for the definition, it's got a definition given by the Ministry of MSMEs, and the spectrum is right from scratch, I'll put it that way, to an investment in plant and machinery of 50 crores and a turnover of 250 crores. So that is the spectrum we are talking of when we are talking of MSMEs. And every small bit of segment, you talk of micro, within micro also, you have even further, the micro, their requirements are totally different. Micro is different, small is different, medium is different. So the spectrum that we are talking is huge, and whatever we try doing is like a drop in the ocean. So that is how it. And on top of that, now that government has also added retailers and traders in the definition of MSME. So when we are talking of what kind of companies are trying to facilitate finance, of course any bank worth its salt is extending finance to MSMEs in some way or the other, be it for their providing for their any machinery or for services, or when you come to the micro level, for their mixed use, I'll put it that way. Because when you talk of very micro, they are kind of they look for a composite kind of a loan where they make a living. Now you will say, what is the relevance of all this in export? See, it's about a value chain where you create it right from the bottom to the top. We talk of handicrafts, they are manufactured by people living in houses, and they reach to marketing chains, and marketing chains market to export it. So this is the kind of value chain that we can be looking at when we talk of khadi is manufactured in houses, in cottages. I mean, cottage is basically what you talk of, cottage industries. So this is the spectrum we are talking about. But then what is the difference that we are creating? I mean, like Exim Bank, SIDBI is also a DFI, Developmental Financial Institution, created by Government of India under an Act of Parliament. And then, see, where I think we should talk more of the MSME credit ecosystem rather than small finance industries, where of course banks are giving. Exim Bank is there, SIDBI is there, but what is changing? You have to see that what is changing is that now the new fintech companies are now joining the brigade. Okay, they are trying to address various problems that are being faced by MSMEs, like the MSMEs which are basically MSMEs are considered as high risk entities. So obviously a lot of information will not be there on public domain. the, they'll not get timely credit, their rates of interest would be very high which they're getting, so their competitiveness gets affected because of those things. So how is the MSME credit ecosystem evolving as a result of that? So I think government of India and of course SIDBI is also partly contributing to their efforts, where the whole ecosystem is being modified. GST has been a game changer, Aadhaar has been a game changer, UPI has been a game changer. All these are revolutionary changes that have taken place, and the whole ecosystem is now evolving in such a fast manner. People talk of industry 4.0, I'll talk of finance or credit 5.0 or 6.0. That's how I'll put it, when we talk of that. And GS, so now fintech companies, the way they're building their algorithms in their software, they're able to extract GST data, they're able to extract bank data, the bank statements data, and so many other host of other parameters in trying to build into their algorithms and trying to see whether I can kind of give finance to the MSME. At the same time, all this credit information companies, the quality of information over the years has improved substantially. And of course, so all this is creating a lot of public information which is helping the finance companies now to take good decisions regarding their credit. And of course, when you take good decisions about credit, your risk perception of the MSME improves, the risk premium kind of decreases, and
I'm not able to hear Anjani ji. Is there?
I think he's gone on mute.
Yeah. Anjani ji, we can't hear you.
am I audible? I think I got off the.
Yes.
Now you are audible, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So another area which generally MSMEs face is they don't have collateral. They want to set up something. They're good people with good technical backgrounds, but they don't have collateral. So to address that, obviously, government is Ministry of MSME and government Ministry of Finance both have created institutions like CGTMSE and NCGTC, where credit guarantee is given. So credit guarantee, anybody who doesn't have collateral securities, they can approach these credit guarantees, of course. And which of course it has been seen that these credit guarantees create a multiplier effect. You have a small corpus in the guarantee corporation, and that helps banks in taking more and more exposure to MSMEs. And this has been greatly experienced when during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the ECLGS scheme was launched by Government of India under the Atmanirbhar program. And government has been able to kind of push 2.5 lakh crore rupees of, or 3 lakh crore rupees in the whole credit system. So that is the kind of leverage that these fundamental things that are taking place. So when we talk of SMEs, how they can optimize their supply chain, so again here, what is basically a buyer or an importer abroad he is looking for? He is basically looking for quality of the product. He is looking for reliability of supply. He is basically looking for cost competitiveness, and how MSMEs can help towards that. Of course, as number of speakers have talked about various external factors that are playing in, like obviously Ukraine war being the latest, and COVID-19 having still having its overhang. So how the whole ecosystem is evolving in terms of that. So of course, Ministry of MSME has got a scheme called Z, which is called the zero defect zero effect scheme, where they kind of handhold the MSMEs to achieve a certain level of achieve a certain level of quality. And And at the same time, the whole ecosystem, how it, again, as I said, the whole ecosystem is evolving in terms of, or structural changes that are taking place are in terms of, the account aggregator thing that is coming up. I mean, recently the finance minister has asked all banks to kind of onboard the account aggregator system, where these account aggregator would be functioning as intermediaries for both the credit, those people who want credit and those people who want to give credit, and they will be kind of facilitators of for providing information. They would be engaging with credit information companies and so many a host of other entities. So, and of course with Aadhaar based authentication, this whole transaction has become digitized. At the same time, see, another thing which has come up is the OCEN, Open Credit Enablement Network, and the Open Network for Digital Network. So these are, again, structures which have been set up by Government of India with the focus of providing a market. Today we have Amazon and all these large e-commerce entities, but over a period of time, they monopolize their activities, and so government again is intervening, and they are trying to create a balanced platform for everybody, including the MSMEs, where they can come and market their product. And there is an echo, if I'm not. Okay. So, sum and substance, the whole ecosystem is evolving so fast. Of course, now that government is also thinking of, some report has been tabled where, all these public sector banks are going to be, kind of merged into one entity. See, government is the owner of all these banks, so they can think of, and with all these digital and technological advantages, the reach of government is really expanding, and reach of credit to these MSMEs is expanding, making it more transparent, making it more affordable, making it more accessible. So all what that now is required of the MSMEs, that they have to be they have to adjust to the new market realities. They have to kind of they have to innovate constantly. Of course, that is always expected of MSMEs, and that they always do, as and that is their inherent quality, that because of their size, because of their structure, they're able to quickly innovate, quickly change their strategy. Somebody's got a lathe machine or a CNC machine or a VNC machine, he can change his product line. I mean, that is not a difficult. Only thing, he has to look for a different market. He has to look for, he has to look for his distinct competitive advantage. So in sum and substance, this is all I had to add to the what all had been said. And thanks again for giving this opportunity to speak here.
Thank you, Mr. Srivastava, for your comments. We have.
I think you're on mute, sir.
We can't hear you, Dhingraji.
You're on mute, sir.
So we have now reached the conclusion of our session. I, on behalf of EPC India, extend our heartiest vote of thanks to Dr. Rajan Sudesh Ratna, Deputy Head and Senior Economic Officer, UNSCAP, New Delhi. Dr. Tamal Sarkar, Senior Advisor, Foundation for MSME Clusters. Ms. Meghana Joglekar, General Manager, Exim Bank. And Mr. Ranjani Srivastava, General Manager and Regional Head, Pune, for making invaluable time available with us and sharing their insight on the broader perspective. As our next session is just around 12 o'clock, I don't know whether we have time for question answer. Pallavi, what do you say? So otherwise, we request all the participants to send their questions either to EPC India or to the speaker, so that they can dealt with accordingly. So our next session is on topic leveraging digital tech and e-commerce platform for engineering MSMEs, slated at 12 p.m. The session would host Mr. Paul V. Jensen, Managing Director, European Business and Technology Center, EBTC, Mr. Vibhor Jain, COO and President, Network Governance Open Network for Digital Commerce, ONDC, Professor S.K. Mahanti, Professor Research and Information System for Developing Countries. We invite all esteemed participants to join the next session also, and we look forward to see you all the same. All the best, and thank you very much for all the speakers for this session, and I hope our members will make full use of that. Thank you very much. Alvi, are you there?
Sir, madam has left for the next session.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.